Hello, I'm Sue, and together with my son Edward, we make up the company 510 Laundry. And what I'm going to do today is show you some ideas for what you can do with your 510 Laundry inspiration kit. I've got one here as it would come to you in its box, and inside we see, all wrapped up in tissue, recycled tissue, is your inspiration pack made up of hand-dyed fabrics. This one is an indigo and natural kit, and it comes with buttons, toning buttons, and threads for you to use. So I'm just going to give you some ideas of what you can do with this kit, but please do add your own fabrics, preferably natural fibres, cotton, silk or wool, and you can use old shirts or jeans, or denim's very good. And also your old buttons, any trimmings that you have that you'd like to use, you can bring in and use with your kit. This is just to get you going, brings everything together for you. So there we have the kit, and I'm going to give you some ideas of what you can do with it. My big interest at the moment is in Boro work, which is an old Japanese method of creating fabric out of little bits of recycled fabric, which they used to do hundreds of years ago in Japan. It's now very sought after and very collectible and very expensive. I don't actually own any pieces of original Boro work, but we have our own little version of it. So here you can see I've taken some of the small pieces from the kit and cut them up to suit, and I just layer them on this piece of denim. So this could be a denim jacket. It looks very good on the pocket of a denim jacket, or it could be on the leg of denim jeans, on the knee if you've got a hole that you don't particularly want. You can use this as a mending method, or you can just use it purely as decoration. So the secret is to get your fabrics, and you can see that I quite like to have a ripped edge rather than a cut edge. I just think it's more interesting. But if you prefer something neater, this one's got a cut edge there, you can go with that as well. There's no rules, there's no regulations, you do whatever you like to do. And the thing to do is just place them on until you find an arrangement that you find pleasing. And then I pin them into place. Get my pins and pin them into place. This is just a very small example. Put your pins in. There we go. It lies nice and flat. They don't have to be oblongs, they don't have to be squares. You can have circles, you can have any shape you want to do. Pin them into place and then tack them with some large tacking stitches, just simple stitches with some old cotton thread that you may have. You can see here my tacking stitches are quite clear on the dark blue, and I'll turn it round. You can see that this piece here I've actually done little rows of running stitches, which is one of the most typical Boro stitches in the Boro work. And when you do this stitching, it gives the fabric a lovely strength. It makes it much stronger, you can see, and also it's very attractive. You can make the stitch into part of the attraction of the item. And the way that you do that is I've taken here one of the threads. I'm using a sort of cream thread off the out of the kit. In the kit you will find there are some 6-strand embroidery threads. Here I've split the 6 strands into 3. So I'm just using 3 threads, and there's the other 3, so it gives me 2 pieces to use. Or some of the threads are single threads, a little bit thicker, and you just use those as a single thread. Okay, so I like to start with a knot at the end of my thread, and then I just go into the piece like this, starting at an edge, pull it up until I get to the knot, and then just do a little running stitch. Now the stitches don't have to be particularly short or tiny or anything like that. This is a relaxing, enjoyable way of stitching, slow stitching. It's just, if you can keep them even, it's quite nice to keep them all even, and just keep going in and out. Very, very simple. If you don't want to put a knot at the back of your work, then put your needle through and do a couple of back stitches before you start stitching your row, and that will hold it in place if you would rather do it that way. It depends what you're using the item for. If you don't want knots on the back, then that's another way of doing it in a neat way. So you just keep going with your rows of stitching And then when you get to the top, sometimes it's actually quite nice to carry on beyond the end of the piece. That becomes part of the decoration. You can go a few stitches beyond like that. And then take your needle down. There you go, take your needle down. And you can see, and then bring it up, not too far away, for your next row of stitches. And off we go again in the other direction. Okay. Now I'll just show you how to do one or two sort of more interesting stitches if you want to. I mean, the simple running stitch is very effective. You don't need to do anything else, but you can, if you want to, do a cross stitch like that. Just take your needle over diagonally, bring it up, and then across here, and bring it down, and it forms a nice cross pattern. And it's a good way of filling in quite a large area if you want to do it, but the whole object of this is to be relaxed and slow stitching, so there isn't really any rush about it. As I say, in Japan, hundreds of years ago, this was done to create new fabrics. They cut up old fabrics to create new fabrics out of necessity, out of dire necessity. And as I say now, they're very, very collectible, and we consider them to be I consider them anyway, to be very, very beautiful pieces of work. And I was lucky enough to see them in Japan a few years ago, but they are very, very expensive, but beautiful to look at. But you can Google Boro work, B-O-R-O, on Google, and you'll get lots of examples. So you just carry on with your stitching, and then you'll form your patterns. We've got crosses, we've got straight stitch, that's all straight stitch there. Keep going on this piece and then go on to your next piece. There's no rules, there's no regulations, you just stitch how you want to stitch, and you'll find that as you build up the stitching, the fabric starts to feel stronger, and if you want to mend something, it's a great way of mending something. When you finish doing all your squares, obviously just take out your tacking stitches. But as you can see, what's the nice thing about it, there's no need to finish off your edges. The stitches will all hold it in place. These are all cotton fabrics, so there's no problem. They'll all work together, and the item will wash well as well. So here I've just got a little bag that I've made. This is just another little idea of something you could do. And you can see I've done some cross stitches down here with some straight stitches. This is using a different pack. This is one that we're just bringing out in bright spring colours with these lovely shades of green and yellow. These are hand dyed as well, hand dyed in Switzerland actually, on recycled shirting fabric. It's quite interesting. This is a little bit of Harris tweed. Each pack has a little bit of Harris tweed in it. I'm so fond of that, it's lovely. A little bit of Liberty. This is a dyed napkin, and these are just various pieces of old shirting and so on, cotton, on a piece of vintage French linen. So what I did, I took my piece of linen, which is at the back of the kit here, the largest piece that all your fabrics are lying on. I used that as the base, and I created my Boro, as we just did, with the pinning on and the tacking and the stitching, and then I've just stitched it into a very simple, really simple, actually Japanese style bag with this sort of grown on cording thing at the top here, carrier at the top here, and that's just using one of the pieces of fabric out of the kit again, little piece of string put through, and there you go. But these are French knots. This is just a little running stitch done in one direction and then done in the other direction to create these little crosses. These are all very typical Boro stitches. This one I've just put stitching around the edge in a pale pink just to pick up the colour of the thread, the fabric, sorry, and I didn't want to do any more because I didn't want to hide the lovely Liberty fabric there. So that's another little idea. And then just to show you that you mustn't throw the tiniest scrap away, I use little bits of the fabric that I've got left to make little cards. And there we go, I've just messed about. That's a little bit of the French linen, a little bit of old damask napkin that's been dyed, a little bit of Liberty. You can do your stitching, do your slow stitching, pin it together and then do your slow stitching, and then finish it all off with a little button, and there you go. You've got a nice little card, and you're using all your tiny scraps of material. Here's another one here that I've done on a brown cardboard background. These are all recycled paper cards that I use. And this one's a little bit brighter, and I would probably use some nice bright threads on that just to make it stand out, and then find a nice little button to add in the middle. So there you go, there's some ideas. The little bits of fabric can also be used for making little things for scrapbooking if you want to build it up, sort of like that, and put a stitch in the middle and use it for scrapbooking. All sorts of ideas, but hopefully that will lead you to use your kit to its full potential, and also give you confidence to add in your own pieces, your own buttons, your own threads and your own fabrics. As I say, one of the main things is to remember, use natural fibres if possible. Old jeans, old denim's very good for that. Use your kit how you'd like to. Please show us what you're going to be doing with it. And the main thing is to enjoy it. It's supposed to be a very relaxing technique to just sit and stitch and quietly meditate on things if you want to, and at the end of the day you have something lovely that you've made. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and please do email with any questions on the website or anything like that. Okay, thank you.